Hello and welcome. You're watching Gravitas with me, Molly Gambhir. Here's a look at what's lined up for you on the show tonight. The Ukraine war is dragging on with no end in sight. For 11 months now, the one question that has dominated global discussions and headlines is who is winning, Russia or Ukraine? And while that question still has no answers, I can tell you for sure that the West is losing patience. The cracks within the Western unity have been widening. It's tired of this war. And questions are now being raised over how far the West will go to support Ukraine. On Gravitas tonight, we get you the numbers that tell you the real story of whether NATO is actually abandoning Ukraine. Also on the show for you tonight, we tell you how China is weaponizing water and why this is dangerous. The Wuhan killer is making life hell for the people in China, and the Wuhan nightmare is only turning uglier. There is a 70% jump in the hospitalizations. We get to the untold story of the plight of the Chinese people. Trouble is mounting for the Prime Minister of the UK. Rishi Sunak is now tackling a seatbelt row. The Labour Party says the leader does not know how to manage a seatbelt, his debit card, the train services, the economy and the country. It is a major win for women in Saudi Arabia. The country has made history with its first women's football tournament. We get you a special Gravitas report. On Thursday, we reported that support for Ukraine had started to falter among its allies. And tonight, we have confirmation. Tonight, we can say with confidence that cracks have indeed started to appear. I'll start with this report. After weeks of will they, won't they, America has made its stand clear. It is not sending the Abrams. Tanks are what Ukraine wanted above all from anyone and everyone. And America's top tank, the Abrams, and the much wanted Leopard from Germany. It may not receive both. But the question is why? We know Germany's intentions. It wants America to send the tanks first. And what about America? It says that giving the tanks to Ukraine does not make sense. That's exactly what the Pentagon is saying, in fact. Let me quote the first response. It's from the Pentagon's Deputy Press Secretary, Sabrina Singh. She says the maintenance and the high cost that it would be taking to maintain an Abrams, it just doesn't make sense to provide that to the Ukrainians at this moment. And the second statement is of Colin Kapp. He is the U.S. Under Secretary of Defense for Policy. And he says, and I'm quoting, "I just don't think we are there yet. The Abrams tank is a very complicated piece of equipment. It's expensive. It's hard to train on. It has a jet engine. I think it's about 3 gallons to the mile with jet fuel. It's not the easiest system to maintain." vintage America. You see, it always has the best of excuses. Every time it does not want to help, and look at the logic that it is offering at this point. If the Abrams tanks are hard to maintain, why not provide Ukraine with other tanks? Last we checked, America had over 6,333 state-of-the-art military tanks. That's way more than any of its so-called NATO allies. And besides the Abrams, there's Stryker, Cougar, Guardian. Of course, the M1 Abrams is still the most effective, the most advanced, and the most lethal tank in America's arsenal. Since the 1980s, it has been constantly competing to find a stronger match. So America's decision to not give them to Ukraine must have some other reason. A facade to hide its unwillingness to do more for Volodymyr Zelensky. Germany, for one, has sensed this and has justified its reluctance to send its best armor by the American decision. And this is what a senior Biden official had said recently. They have us over a barrel. He was referring to officials in Berlin. Basically, the German leader wants to be in lockstep with Washington. And their message to America is simple. You give a few tanks, we give a few tanks. The burden should be shared. The two sides even held a meeting to solve this issue. The American Defense Secretary and the German Defense Minister sat down for talks, but there was no word on any progress. Here's a question. Did they reach an understanding that tanks should not be sent to Kiev? The best reason is that they believe that Ukraine will launch an offensive to retake Crimea if it gets the 300 tanks that it wants. And that is unacceptable to the West, which kept quiet when Russia occupied Crimea in 2014. Ukraine, meanwhile, has had enough of this. It has received less than 100 new tanks. Zelensky is making indirect statements like these. Let me quote now. I am powerful in Europe. I will help if someone else outside of Europe will also help. It seems to me that this is not a very correct strategy. And this was the thinly disguised criticism of Germany for its stance. What does all of this tell you? That there is a kind of calibration going on in the West. A rethink of sorts on how long can they help Ukraine. And here's more proof. The director of the CIA, the Central Intelligence Agency, traveled to Ukraine last week. William Burns held a secret meeting with Zelensky. What did they discuss? No one has made their discussions public, reassuring him of American support to Ukraine, says some of the American media. And we have our doubts if this indeed was the case. Even then, why did the CIA boss have to go personally to Kiev to reassure Zelensky? There is clearly more than what's meeting the eye at this point. My point is simple. After 11 months of this war, the mood seems to be changing. Officially, Western leaders are maintaining that they are with Ukraine, but cracks in the Western front are definitely starting to emerge. Let me show you some more evidence now. This report came out earlier this week. It said that Italy has delayed its decision to supply Ukraine with new arms until February. And why is that? Due to political tensions, cost considerations, and military shortages. This is according to the Italian newspaper La Repubblica. Meanwhile, in Spain, a survey was conducted. It asked the people for their opinion. Almost 50% of them said that it should be at the soonest, even if Ukraine would have to sacrifice some territory, even if Ukraine would have to make concessions to Moscow. And this survey is yet another reminder of how the European people are also tired of this war. And one of the biggest reasons for this is that throughout the last 11 months, the West has failed to set a common strategic goal. It has failed to clarify what the aim of arming Ukraine in the long term really is. Whether they are aiming at winning small or winning big, none of this has been clearly or consistently defined. They have just kept helping Ukraine without giving much thought to how long this help can sustain. And this realization has come a bit too late. Because back in Moscow, in the gleaming white halls of the Kremlin, Vladimir Putin has sensed that the West has lost the stomach to fight. Reports say there is creeping confidence in Putin that sooner or later Europe will get tired of helping Ukraine. And which is why he is making statements like these. Russian victory in Ukraine is guaranteed. He said this during a recent visit to St. Petersburg, that he has no doubt that Moscow is about to defeat Ukraine. Will his prophecy come true? The developments in the days ahead hold the answer. And our next story is about the water wars. Are they soon coming to Asia? It certainly looks like it, courtesy the Dragon. It plans to weaponize water, use it as a coercive tool to build pressure on its neighbors, especially India, a country that China fears could soon surpass it as a regional powerhouse. So what is China doing? It is building a dam along India's border, a 60,000 megawatt dam in the foothills of the Himalayas. And once completed, this dam would be the biggest in the region, also the biggest threat to India's sovereignty. So where exactly is this dam being built? The dam is being built on a tributary of the river Ganga. The Chinese call it the Yarlung Zangbo River. It flows into Arunachal Pradesh as the Siang and then to Assam as the Brahmaputra River. Remember, this river also flows into Nepal's Ghagra before it ultimately joins River Ganga in India. So for how long has this dam been under construction? Well, Beijing first unveiled its plan in November 2020. It said that it intended to build an enormous dam as part of its 14th five-year plan. This plan sets out China's socio-economic and development goals until 2025. This dam is an integral part of it. And guess what? China is working on it at the speed of 1,000 gazelles. Have a look at these satellite images. They have been released by Damien Simon, a geospatial intelligence researcher. And these images show earth development and dam construction activity on the Mabja Zangbo River. Its exact location is the Burang County of Tibet. The images depict the obstruction of the river's path and the formation of a reservoir. The researcher has also provided some details. He says that according to the latest satellite images, the dam appears to be 350 to 400 meters long. It apparently appears to be an embankment dam. An airport is also being constructed in the nearby area. The construction work has been underway since early 2021. Now, here's the thing. This dam is being built at the strategic tri-junction of China's borders with India and Nepal, right opposite the Kalapani region of Uttarakhand state, which Nepal has repeatedly called contentious. So once completed, this dam could prove to be a major geopolitical headache for India. And what's worse, this dam could also be used to store water, which can cause water shortages in Assam and Arunachal Pradesh, and which upon release could also create floods downstream. And this would affect not just India, but also countries like Bangladesh. And now here's the thing. The India-China relationship over shared water resources has always been complicated, especially over the Brahmaputra. It is the most important of the rivers that traverses the Sino-Indian border. And if we quantify this importance, nearly 30% of India's freshwater resources and 40% of India's hydropower potential comes from this river. This makes it very important for India's socio-economic development. China's plan could hinder this development, and the question is, what is India doing to counter this? Well, the answer is on your screen. India is responding to this with tit for tat. It has also initiated a hydroelectric project in Arunachal Pradesh. It is apparently building an 11,000 megawatt dam. This will be in Arunachal's upper Subansiri area. And reports say once completed, this will be the biggest hydroelectric project in the country. And that's not all. India has also expedited other stalled projects in Arunachal Pradesh. At least 3 of the projects will be allocated to the National Hydroelectric Power Corporation for completion. According to the Arunachal Times, the state government is also handing over 5 terminated projects from individual power producers to the central public sector undertakings. And so it's safe to say that India is prepared to deal with China's assertiveness in the region. But will these countermeasures be enough? You see, besides building dams, China has also inhabited vast stretches of the LAC. It has built dozens of villages in uninhabited areas. And experts say China's aim is to use these villages as a pretext to claim more territory along the disputed boundary. So going ahead, India will have to do more than initiate projects in the area. It will have to lay out a detailed plan to counter China's hydro-hegemonic behavior. And from China's expansionist ambitions, we come to China's homemade virus, COVID-19, the Wuhan virus. It has brought the CCP down to its knees. We have been telling you how the current Wuhan virus wave is worse than what China had expected. And tonight, we have more proof for you. Have a look at this report. It says hospitalizations in China have jumped by a huge margin. Now, if we break this down into numbers, the hospitalizations rose by at least 70% this week. Over 60,307 people had to be hospitalized due to the virus. The WHO says this is the highest rate of hospitalizations in China since the pandemic started. And the visuals from China are a testimony to this fact. Look at these images. They were released by the state broadcaster CCTV. They are from a hospital in Beijing. They show the patients lining up outside emergency rooms, doctors tending to the infected lying on the stretchers. Watch this.
医院根据患者病情的轻重缓急，在重症病房和新冠综合病房之间进行灵活流转，统筹兼顾了新冠的重症和非新冠的重症病人的救治。
Since mid-December, the number of patients we have received at the ER has increased by 2 or 3 folds.
And then we have these images. They have been released by the Chinese dissident Jennifer Zhang. They apparently show smoke rising from a funeral home in the Zhejiang province. And she says these funeral homes have become the busiest places in China currently. And these images are from the Heilongjiang province. They show people lining up outside a crematorium. Reports say the lines begin even before dawn and last all the way until evening. Remember, this spike in cases and deaths coincides with the Lunar New Year holidays which China intends to go forward with as per plan. It has lifted the restrictions, remember, to maintain a semblance of normalcy. And this has led to thousands of people crowding the train stations, looking for the next train to catch home. Isn't this dangerous, to say the least? Wouldn't this lead to more infections? Wouldn't it lead to more deaths of Chinese citizens? Well, Beijing could not care less. After 4 years of this pandemic and protests from Chinese citizens, it does not want to take any more chances. And it's trying to project an image of normalcy. by letting millions of its people travel home. But what about those who are dying? What about those who have lost their family members? China is trying to silence them. Look at the report on your screen. The CCP has unleashed a censorship crackdown to silence what it calls the COVID rumors, quote unquote. And according to this report, Chinese cyber authorities have announced new internet regulations to ensure there are no gloomy sentiments caused by the countless deaths, at least for the next 1 week of the holidays. This is what China's National Cyber Administration has apparently said. I'm quoting, there needs to be an in-depth rectification of false information and other issues to prevent gloomy sentiments. Online rumors related to the epidemic and fabricated patient experiences must be investigated and punished. Now remember, the Chinese social media has been awash with personal stories of the people who have either contracted COVID-19, lost elderly relatives to the infection, or are struggling to source medication. These stories have prompted unusual levels of online criticism against the Chinese regime. And the CCP, being hypersensitive to any form of criticism, plans to use these censorship rules to protect its image. And as for those suffering, it's subjecting them to inhumane practices like these. Ice burial. What exactly is ice burial? Well, through this technology, corpses can be instantly frozen in liquid nitrogen at minus 196 degrees and then turned into powder form. This process is much faster as compared to cremation. It can be used to conduct funerals in private and avoid chances of further criticism over images of the smoke billowing out from the funeral homes. This is the kind of humiliation that China plans to subject its own people to. This clearly shows China will not show any regard to its people, even in death. As the virus it gave the world continues to pose new threats to mankind, look at this headline. It's based on a study by the European Society of Cardiology. It says that COVID-19 patients retain elevated risk of death for at least 18 months after the infection. At least 18 months, meaning they have a high chance of death, even 18 months after they were infected. The study says after infection, the patient may still develop numerous cardiovascular conditions which may heighten the risk of death in the long term. It says that due to this reason, patients with COVID-19 should be monitored for at least a year after they recover. It doesn't matter whether they are vaccinated or not. And this report is alarming. And the situation in China precarious. Will this Wuhan virus nightmare ever end? Will we ever overcome this Wuhan killer? There is no easy answer to these questions. Meanwhile, the scandal-hit European Parliament is trying hard to rebuild its credibility. It was shaken by the Qatargate corruption controversy, and now it is desperate to get back on its feet. The European Parliament President, Roberta Metsola, has promised more transparency and accountability. She has also disclosed a special list, a list of 142 gifts that Metsola received on behalf of the institution. What exactly are these gifts? Among many other things, Metsola received a gold model tower from a senior Moroccan politician, a white dress with golden embroidery from the Speaker of the Bahrain Parliament, a white blouse from Moldova's president, a scarf from the French Prime Minister. She also received champagne, chocolates, cookies and cake, which were served during the Parliament's functions. But why am I telling you all of this? You see, these gifts are offered from the dignitaries to the European Parliament and not to any particular member of the Parliament. They belong to the institution. And under the Parliament's Code of Conduct, the gifts need to be declared by the end of the month following the month in which they are received. But questions are being raised over the timing of this announcement by the European Parliament President. The European Parliament has been neck deep in the Qatargate mess. You see, it never fails to preach to the world about morals, ethics, transparency. But it fails to practice these itself. Metzola's announcement is late. She missed the deadline for 125 out of the 142 gifts. 125 of them. Additionally, the Code of Conduct states that the gifts should be declared internally, and most importantly, the President should know about it. But Metsola has gone a step further. She has logged the gifts on the public register. It seems like nothing but a deliberate attempt to whitewash whatever is happening in the European Parliament. But her move seems to have done more harm than good. Instead of an applause or appreciation, it has attracted crude criticism. And it has exposed the EU institutions' limited transparency rules. Metzola's spokesperson was quick to come to her rescue. She said the deadline for the MEPs did not apply to Metsola by custom. And why is that? Because she is the president of the parliament as well as an MEP. But her team could not cite any such official exemption. And experts are saying that this shows the systemic problems, how the system itself is broken. You cannot operate an ethics system on the basis of unwritten rules. Metsola did take a step in the direction of transparency, but as harsh as it may sound, there are no prizes for sticking to the rules. The gifts register applies to all the members, but since the start of this legislature in mid-2019, only 10 lawmakers, including Metsola, have declared any gifts at all. And the president's announcement also comes well after the deadline. Wherever there are gifts and free lunches, controversies follow, whether it is the European Parliament, which sits on this high horse of morals, or a South Asian nation like Pakistan. Its Toshkhana, or the gift treasure house, has also been hitting the headlines. It is the department that stores precious gifts given to the parliamentarians, the bureaucrats and officials by heads of other governments and foreign dignitaries. Former Pakistan Prime Minister Imran Khan has stirred a lot of controversy. According to the Toshkhana rules, gifts and other such materials received by the officials will be reported to the Cabinet Division. And Imran Khan has been under scrutiny for withholding details from the Cabinet Division. When the PTI party was in power, it was reluctant to disclose details of the gifts presented to Imran Khan. You see, it argued that this would jeopardize international ties. This was despite the Pakistan Information Commission's orders. The former premier is facing legal proceedings. And even though Pakistan's government is always keen to criticize Imran Khan, for some reason it seems to have changed its stance as far as this matter is concerned. The government has showed its apprehensions before the Lahore High Court. It says that the public disclosure gifts could cause unnecessary media hype, and that might potentially damage Pakistan's international relations. Well, why is the government going soft on Imran Khan? Why this sudden change of heart? Meanwhile, trouble is only mounting for the British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak. But this time, it's not about the economy or the protests over pay raises or about the failure to live up to the climate actions. British police are looking into a rather interesting case, which involves the Prime Minister of the UK, Rishi Sunak himself. The British Prime Minister is facing backlash after a video of him was posted where he could be seen riding in a car without a seatbelt, which, by the way, is a punishable offence in the UK. The police response has been prompted by a viral social media clip in which Sunak is seen sitting in a moving car but without his seatbelt on. In the video, the unbuckled Conservative leader speaks about his policies for boosting growth during a trip to Lancashire in England's north. Take a look at this video first.
One of my New Year's promises to you was to grow the economy, and today we're announcing the second round of allocations from our Levelling Up Fund, and that's about investing in local areas in order to create jobs and help deliver on that promise to boost growth. In total, we're announcing over £2 billion of funding, and that's going to go to support projects across 100 different local communities around the UK. Now, I'm out and about seeing Levelling Up in action all across the country today. So from Crossrail in Cardiff to Ferry in Fair Isle, we're building on the almost £2 billion and 100 projects we've already funded previously in this fund. Now, you can follow my progress as I go around the country today here online, or alternatively, go to the government's Levelling Up website where you can see an interactive map of everything that we're doing.
Now, this video has put the leader in a very tough spot, so much so that he had to apologize for the incident. His office said it was an error of judgment on his part and that he took his seatbelt off for a short period of time to film the clip. Rishi Sunak's spokesperson came to his rescue, saying that the Prime Minister fully accepts this was a mistake and apologizes, adding that the Prime Minister believes everyone should wear a seatbelt. While being apologetic for the incident is not enough, irrespective of the position that you hold in the society, the law applies to everyone. According to the UK government, you can be fined $617 for not wearing a seatbelt when you are supposed to. Moreover, a government report released in 2021 says 24% of car occupant fatalities in the past 5 years were because of not wearing a seatbelt. On the other hand, a Lancashire police spokesperson has said that authorities were aware of the matter and they will be looking into it. The leader, Rishi Sunak, has been driving into one controversy after another. He took office in October 2022, ending a year of political instability, but life has been quite unstable for him ever since. He is dealing with major economic troubles, a broken healthcare system, along with protests. Inflation in the UK in recent months has crossed the 10% mark. People are struggling to make ends meet. The cost of commodities is only rising. The NHS, the country's healthcare system, has been protesting for a while now over pay raise. In the latest, the heads of health services are organizing the coordinated walkouts, and this could be the biggest day of industrial action the NHS has ever seen, as this would be the first time nurses, ambulance workers and paramedics would refuse to work at the same time.
Nursing for 35 years, I never saw a time that I would be on strike, but things really have got so bad that I feel that we don't have any other option. We need to get Rishi Sunak to come and talk to Pat Cullen about how we can resolve the pay situation that we're in. There's always enough money for MPs to get a pay rise. I don't know why they can't actually talk to us reasonably.
Sunak has been under constant pressure. He was put under opposition fire for using a Royal Air Force jet to fly to the north of the country. Although Downing Street insisted the use of the aircraft was to ensure the best use of the Prime Minister's time. The opposition, the Labour Party, also took a dig at the Prime Minister when he struggled to make a contactless payment with his card. So while the UK is facing increasing issues, the Prime Minister does not seem to know how to manage a seatbelt, his debit card, the train services, the economy, and the country itself. Have you bought a new Android phone lately? Did it come loaded with all sorts of applications? Google Maps, YouTube, Gmail, Google Search, Google App Store and whatnot. Now, I don't know if you noticed this, but most of the apps that come pre-installed in a new phone belong to the US tech giant Google, and there is a reason for that. Google has been dominating the Android devices, and of late it has started abusing this dominance. The company forced device makers to pre-install its suite of services, that too without giving the users an option to remove them. The matter was taken to the Competition Commission of India, or the CCI. The commission ordered Google to make a series of changes. It ruled that Google should not force the device makers to pre-install a bouquet of apps, neither should it decide their placement. That's not all. The tech giant was also restrained from striking agreements ensuring exclusivity for its search services. Google was also told to allow third-party app stores within its Play Store and that it should not restrict the users from uninstalling the apps. But it did not sit right with Google. It said that the changes would hurt the consumers and stall the growth of the Android ecosystem in India. You see, this is what Google does when it obtains the vast majority of its revenues via its flagship product, the Google search engine. The company played it smart right from the beginning. It bought the original developer of the Android mobile operating system in 2005 and has continued to develop Android ever since. The tech giant licenses the Android system to smartphone makers. Through its control over Android, Google is dominant in the worldwide market except for China. And the company claims that it provides more choice for everyone. It also says its agreements like pre-installing Google apps on the smartphones actually help keep the operating system free and open. But the critics find it anti-competitive. After the sweeping changes ordered by the CCI, Google took the case to the top court of India. It pleaded to block the antitrust order imposed on it. It warned that the measures would affect the development of Android. They would force Google to change agreements with more than 1,100 device makers and tens of thousands of app developers. The judges have now decided to uphold the impositions. And Indian startups are celebrating. Google has 7 days to comply with the ruling. It also is facing a fine of $161 million. And by the way, this is not the first time Google has come under scrutiny. The European Commission fined Google a record $4.3 billion in 2018. It said that the tech giant breached the EU's antitrust rules, and now market dominance is as such not illegal under the European Union's rules. However, dominant companies have the responsibility to never abuse their position. They are not allowed to restrict competition through their policies. But Google has been found guilty of that. About 80% of smart mobile devices in Europe and worldwide run on Android. About 600 million smartphones are being used in India. Data suggests that 97% of them run on Android. Imagine Google was enjoying dominance over such a large number of devices, all because of its anti-competitive policies. But not anymore. And experts are calling the CCI directives a landmark decision. They have renewed hopes for Indian startups who never really bloomed because of the American tech giant Google. The checks imposed on Google can open up horizons for new companies. There will be no mandate on device makers to install the Google apps. Even Google Store will now host third-party app stores. And if you are wondering how, let me explain this. If you already have Google Maps on your phone, would you ever go looking for more applications? It is possible, but highly unlikely. Marketing strategies, you see, thrive on our habit of seeking convenience. But now, if Google Apps will not be at your disposal, you are more likely to open the App Store and search for other applications. In addition to that, allowing other app stores within Google's Play Store would give the customers more choice. It would also promote the use of diverse applications. The CCI's decision may well lead to the rise of new Indian competitors in video hosting, mapping, web browsers, and dare I say it, search engines as well.